Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Russian provocations on NATO's eastern flank are intensifying. Just a week after drones violated Polish airspace, Estonia reports that 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entered its territory for 12 minutes. An unprecedentedly brazen act, according to Tallinn. Estonia has now invoked NATO Article 4, requesting urgent consultations. With Poland and Romania also facing similar incursions, questions grow about how NATO should respond. Well, to help us understand the stakes and possible next steps, we're joined by General Ben Hodges, former Commander of U.S. Army, Europe and Africa. General, welcome back. Good to have you back, sir.
Thank you, Ashim.
So let's start with these violations. Okay, there's Romania, there's Poland with the drones, and now there's Estonia with the fighter jets. And today we had a Russian reconnaissance plane over the Baltic Sea, which was escorted out. What do you make of the big picture? What's going on here?
Well, of course, we are paying the price now for a failure in the West to make Russia obey international law. We have not given them any reason to worry that we might do that. The fact that they launched 21 drone missiles into drones into Poland, despite having 10,000 American troops there inside Poland, that tells you that the Russians have no respect or fear that the U.S. Or NATO might actually respond in any meaningful way. So what we're seeing is what we've known about Russia for decades, is that unless they feel consequences, they will keep pushing the limits. And this won't be the end of it until they finally do see some actual consequences.
And when you say consequences, General, can you be more specific? Like what?
Yeah, well, obviously, one of them would be shooting down drones that they launch against us. And I would also recommend, by the way, the way we think about this, it's not an incursion, it's not just an airspace violation. That was an operation, a Russian operation to launch 21 drones that landed all inside Poland, or the 3 Russian aircraft that were flying around inside Estonia for about 12 minutes. These were not 3 pilots that were lost. This was a deliberate probe of our defenses to see how we would respond, how quick we would be. And I think what they're finding is that we still have not figured out how to stop these things. And so the consequences could be shoot down drones, even shoot down an aircraft, as our Turkish allies did back several years ago, or maybe an asymmetric response, some sort of a very significant response against, let's say, shadow fleet vessels in the Baltic Sea each time launches an operation into Allied airspace.
Yes, sorry, go on.
I was saying, of course, people will be concerned about, oh my gosh, if we shoot down a Russian aircraft, what does that lead to? Well, again, Turkey did it in 2015, and Russia stopped violating their airspace. This is the time for our political leaders to make it clear to Russia that this is not going to be tolerated.
Right. Well, some NATO leaders are saying, absolutely, Turkey did it as you are right now, and the Russian aircraft were in Turkish airspace only for a matter of 17 or so seconds, whereas these aircraft were over Estonian airspace for much longer. So there are calls for shooting those aircraft down. Do you think there's there's a political and a military will to do it, General?
Well, so far, I'm not seeing it. Poland, to its credit, at least had rules of engagement that allowed their pilots to shoot down the drones. Not every country in Eastern Europe has even done this. Now, I am encouraged that NATO has initiated Operation Eastern Sentry, which I anticipate will increase the readiness and awareness. It probably also means converting the Baltic Sea air policing mission into an air defense mission, which is a different set of rules of engagement. The point is, we can talk about the challenges, people are concerned, but until you do something about it, this is going to continue. And you and I will be talking again 3 weeks from now after the next Russian operation against Poland. So I think we know that Russia only respects strength and firmness, and right now they're not seeing it. And the failure of the United States to be an active voice here, the fact that President Trump does not seem to be willing to really inflict any kind of consequences on Russia for anything for the last 8 months, I think that also is what emboldens them. It has only gotten worse since that famous embarrassing meeting in Alaska. Attacks on Ukraine have increased since then, and all of these operations that you and I are talking about now have happened since that meeting in Alaska.
Understood. And yes, we are still awaiting some kind of concrete response from President Trump to dissuade Putin against this. And we look forward to that happening soon. Where do you see the greatest vulnerability in terms of NATO borders?
Well, of course, aircraft and missiles and drones can cross borders into NATO territory more quickly and easily than you might expect from ground troops. The problem is the Russians exploit our lack of firmness. What they've been doing in the Baltic Sea now for the past couple of years of the destruction of undersea cables and pipelines, assassination attempts, sabotage, disinformation, all the criminal activity that they do, and we haven't done anything about it. We still have European countries that are using Russian oil and gas. We have not yet moved aggressively to stop the flow of Russian oil that goes to India and China and Turkey, Hungary, and Slovakia, which is what pays for their war against Ukraine. We haven't even used our economic tools. And so when you ask which border is the most vulnerable, it's all of them. It's air, land, sea, economic, diplomatic, legal. And unfortunately, the United States is missing in action on this one. And I think our European allies are going to have to get serious about the possibility, number one, that the U.S. won't be there. It hurts me deeply to even say that. But this is a possibility. And the second thing is that Europeans need to recognize that Russia is at war with us, even if we're not at war with them.
Right. Well, that actually brings me rather neatly on to the next point, which is how does one define an attack on a NATO country under Article 5? Is what Russia has been doing thus far count as an attack?
Well, at the end of the day, Article 5 is a political decision. If that's the reason Poland and then Estonia asked for Article 4 consultations, is to talk about what's happening and to help the alliance figure out how it should respond and how it should prevent any future sort of operations like this. Now, of course, Article 5 says that an armed attack on one shall be considered an armed attack on all. And then, even if the nations all agree that this was the case, then it's up to the nations to decide what they are going to do. Certainly, a kinetic strike that was targeted against, let's say, a Polish air base or our power grid, something like that, I think most nations would consider that is an armed attack. But still, at the end of the day, the nations have to agree on what happened. Does that actually constitute Article 5 armed attack? There is no automatic thing about it. There's no laser beam like at a store. You walk through the beam and the door opens up. There's nothing automatic. There's nothing that triggers Article 5. It is a political decision by the nations. And of course, nations are all sovereign. So each of them can do what's in their best interest. I think what President Stubb has attempted to do in Finland is to unite all of the nations, including Poland, that are on the Baltic Sea, to figure out what can they do in a regional way to stop Russia's so-called gray zone attacks against infrastructure and flagrant violations of international law in the Baltic Sea.
Understood. Now, as I understand it from what you just said, General, so Article 4 discussions are a prelude to defining whether Article 5 should be triggered. Does that include defining what an attack is? Obviously, the kinetic attack is an obvious example, but the hybrid attacks that Russia has been conducting. And secondly, when the Article 4 discussions are taking place, who's involved, and does the decision have to be unanimous to move to the next stage?
Okay, so don't think of Article 4 as a precursor to Article 5. I mean, you could go straight to Article 5. The Article 4 has been invoked several times over the last few years. These are consultations that are called, that are not in the normal cycle, let's say, of meetings that the alliance conducts. But the expectation would be that the national representative, the ambassador to NATO from each country would participate, and also the senior military representative would be there. So the ambassador and the general from each country would participate in these talks, representing their nation in these consultations. There's nothing that says you have to do Article 4 consultation before you can go to Article 5. And again, you use the triggered word. Nothing is triggered. I mean, that makes it sound like there's sort of an automatic aspect to it. It's not. It would be a nation saying, hey, we were just attacked, and we request that this be considered as Article 5. And then they would go through the process. Now, NATO, of course, if they practice this, this would not be discovery learning. And of course, even as we're speaking right now, you know, in the headquarters at NATO, the conversations are going on all the time. Preparations are going on all the time at all the different headquarters. It's actually pretty impressive, right, what they're doing to be prepared.
Understood. General Hodges, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there, but thank you, as always, for sharing your analysis with our audience. Come and see us again soon. Have a good day.
Thank you for the privilege.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.